Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning to some of you guys too. Thanks for joining us in here on episode number 3 of 3 Up, 3 Down in our current series, breaking down the 4 umpire system for the 60-foot diamond. Today, we're in our third episode here. We'll get ready to go ahead and talk about tracking and chasing fly balls. We'll actually kind of revisit a lot of the same types of ideas and fundamentals that we've mentioned in the previous 2 episodes, both with the basic rotations and the full and fill rotation. And then last week, if you remember, we also talked extensively about the areas of responsibility. So a lot of those will come back into play here for us this week. A couple announcements, reminders, and things like that. Little League went ahead and released all the umpires that'll be umpiring the Little League Softball World Series this year and in the Little League Baseball World Series. As you guys have probably seen, they are inviting back some individuals that have worked both those tournaments before. I just wanted to say congratulations to all of them. Many of us know a lot of the individuals that are being reassigned there, so I think it's a great opportunity. It'll be really fun to go ahead and watch later on here this summer. A lot of not only our colleagues, so if you want to call them that, but our friends working those and obviously learning from what they are able to give to us on the diamonds here. So congratulations to them here in their second appointment to either the Little League Softball or Little League World Series here later this year. A couple tournament resources here, speaking of the World Series, for us to go through and talk about. Gary Groutman and a lot of individuals out in the West have issued us a tournament rules of interest document that we've been using week in and week out. So that's one to go ahead and reference, especially for those of you guys here that are leading a lot of the different types of district meetings or coaches meetings that you may have either with a district tournament and the state tournament or a sectional tournament. If you're looking for something to touch base with, that is a really good resource to use, and then obviously a good resource for all of us to use as we all get ready and prepared for district tournament season here. Many of us are probably actually underway with that as well. So rules of interest is one of those documents. Second of which then is the changes to mandatory play. That FAQ was released last week. I just want to make sure that we are all in good shape, both with the rules of interest and the mandatory play FAQ that was released by Little League Baseball here last week. And that way we're all ready to go for tournament play. That's all the announcements, reminders here that I've got. Anybody else, DJ Seth, anything else here for us before we go ahead and get started with this week's conversation?
Stu.
Yes, sir. Gary, go ahead.
On the point of emphasis for baseball and softball, especially on the baseball side, lots of small interpretations coming out from Little League International. Nothing in the points of emphasis is incorrect. Sometimes you've got to get a little of the Little League International shading especially in the mandatory play at bat section and the substitution section to make sure you're absolutely right. So I'd encourage you to use the points of emphasis as a companion document, but have the Little League International updates with you.
That's an absolute great point. Yep, mirror those two together, as Gary was saying. Good job. And Gary, thank you for putting that resource together with you and your folks out in the West. Tremendous job on that one. And I know a lot of people rely on that stuff to help them out, both with their meetings and obviously just gaining knowledge. So thanks for sharing that here with us. Anything else from anyone, DJ Seth or anybody else, anything that I forgot here before we get going?
All good.
All good.
Alrighty, give us a little bit of an overview here of what exactly we've got in front of us today. Obviously, tracking and chasing fly balls, as I mentioned previously, is our point of emphasis for us to discuss here today. This is episode 3. The first episode we took a look at was the 2 basic rotations in the 4-umpire system on the 60-foot diamond, the fill and full rotations. We'll mention those here today. Second episode last week was all about the areas of responsibility for catch, no catch, in addition to fair foul coverage and then retouch responsibilities too. Those will kind of come into conversation as well here. So if you've not yet seen those 2 episodes, probably take a look at those here before today because they'll obviously pair a lot with the conversation that we're getting ready to go through on tracking and chasing fly balls. Now we'll talk about not only how exactly we should track and chase fly balls as a U1, U2, and U3. We'll also talk about some nonverbal communication that we've got to use as a crew, both with some tweener balls and then just some of the normal fly balls to kind of enhance our teamwork and the effectiveness of the crew as well. So a lot of kind of small things here for us to talk about today in tracking and chasing, and obviously we're excited to go ahead and get that going here for us today. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys as we normally do. I'll go ahead and get that one all up and ready here for us. Typical thing, a couple of concepts for us to look at big picture wise. And then we'll go ahead and move on from there to take a look then at some video clips and things of that nature for us to go ahead and look at. But again, tracking and chasing is our major theme here to go ahead and cover for us today. Now, before we get in this one, just want to make sure that we very quickly touch on to areas of responsibility for catch, no catch. And Seth would have talked us through this last week. Remember that the plate umpire has all catch, no catch on the infield here in the 60-foot diamond or in our 4-umpire system on the 60-foot diamond. So the plate umpire has all catch, no catch on the infield. And then he or she, the plate umpire, is responsible for all catch, no catch, that is routine, in the outfield. So all catch, no catch in the infield, all routine in the outfield, all belong to the plate umpire. And obviously the exception would be the trouble balls, which we'll get into here in tracking and chasing here more specifically today. But again, plate umpire has everything on the infield, and then it has responsibility as the plate umpire for all catch, no catch then in the outfield as well. That is routine. Now, the plate umpire then, with those responsibilities on the infield and the routine ones in the outfield, is going to have some responsibilities for tracking and chasing. And just as we've talked about in the 2-umpire system, we're going to want to see that plate umpire be mobile. And obviously, the extent or the aggression of mobility is going to be dependent upon the situation, whether or not there are runners in scoring position or if there is anything else that would require the umpire to kind of remain close to the plate. So let's first talk about the plate umpire chasing fly balls here with no runners in scoring position. And obviously with no runners in scoring position, we can be a little bit more aggressive in the plate umpire's pursuit of that fly ball. And again, remember, the plate umpire is responsible for all routine fly balls to the outfield. Now, in order to do so with no runners in scoring position, we will see the plate umpire clear the catcher, typically to the left and through the right-hander's batter's box. So we want to clear the catcher through the left. We'll see the umpire chase in the direction of the fly ball. We want to see that umpire get as far as the play allows him or her to. So sometimes, our aiming point is somewhere between the dirt circle and the mound, but sometimes we can get further. Sometimes just on the nature of the play, we can't get as far. So get as far as the play allows you to, and then make sure we get set. That's going to be a theme that I'm going to continuously revisit and come back to. Make sure that we get set before the fielder attempts to make the catch. And then once we handle those responsibilities, proper use of eyes, and we do the things that we need to do on the catch, no catch, and those responsibilities there for routine fly balls to the outfield, we'll want to see the plate umpire then return aggressively to point of plate, because if the ball's down, we're going to obviously have responsibilities then for any scoring play at the plate. And I do want to give us a visual here as to what exactly that looks like here in tracking and chasing fly balls as the plate umpire. Now, as a quick disclaimer here, this umpire does a great job of being aggressive with no runners in scoring position, but for our purposes, remember, we're going to want to see this umpire clear to the left or through the right-hander's batter's box. The umpire in this clip doesn't necessarily do so, but at the same time, this umpire does effectively get some distance and some aggressive nature here with no runners in scoring position. So the ball off the bat here is going to be hit to the left center, and let's take a look then at our plate umpire. He comes out. Again, remember, he should clear to the left, but again, very aggressively goes out in the direction of the fly ball. You see he's got eyes on it. The distance here is great. And then he gets set potentially before that center fielder or the left fielder is going to go ahead and make a play. So again, very good job here by this plate umpire being aggressive to get as far as the play allows, goes out in the direction of the fly ball, and then we don't necessarily see it in the clip. But remember, we're going to run and return aggressively back to point of plate. And again, although this umpire doesn't do it, we want to see our umpires move to the left here. That way we don't run into the catcher who may be trailing the batter runner up the line. So we clear F2 then to the left. But a good job there for distance and just for visual purposes here for our plate umpire in this case. Now, what happens if there's runners in scoring position? So if we take a look at the new clip here, runners are at first and third, and I'll get to the clip here in just a second. But because there are runners in scoring position, the plate umpire cannot be as aggressive in tracking and chasing fly balls as we saw in the previous clip. So with no runners in scoring position, we can be aggressive. With runners in scoring position, though, as we see demonstrated here, we want to make sure that we use the shot collar, and I'll use it around the dirt circle. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we cannot leave the dirt circle. It just means that should be our point of reference, or at least a caution point here, because typically with runners in scoring position, yes, we may have responsibilities to the outfield for catch, no catch, and that's the priority. We're also going to have a potential scoring play, so we don't want to go too far from the plate, specifically point of plate, because we're going to have to come right back there for any potential developing play at the plate. So we want to use then the shot collar here, that mantra, I guess you could say, around the dirt circle. We want to make sure we avoid leaving the vicinity of the dirt circle here to rule on catch, no catch with runners in scoring position. That way we can go ahead and return aggressively to point of plate. Remember here, in a lot of situations, we'll have R3's retouch, particularly if there is a situation where an umpire leaves. So here in this clip, this umpire with runners in scoring position does a great job. The ball's to like left field, gets to center field or like left center field. And then as we see this umpire do, he gets to that dirt circle, kind of uses that as the shot collar. That distance is going to allow him then to get back to point of plate for this scoring play. Okay, so again, want to use that shot collar with runners in scoring position. In this case, the umpire has the routine fly ball. He's also got, because this is a 3-umpire system here, he's also got R3's retouch at third base. But nonetheless here, for our purposes, we see routine. So we want to make sure that we have the catch, and then we want to see this umpire return aggressively back to point of plate. That way, if we have any scoring play here, we're obviously in position there. So with no runners in scoring position, we can obviously be a little bit more aggressive in tracking and chasing routine balls as the plate umpire. With runners in scoring position, use that dirt circle as a shot collar. That way, we're back in time for any potential play at point of plate. We want to return aggressively in both situations to point of plate. DJ Seth, anything else to cover there or talk about in that situation and with that concept?
All good with me.
Nope, all good.
Alrighty. Now, for the most part, we want to focus on trouble balls and areas of responsibility then for our base umpires. And, as we talked about in previous weeks, you can kind of see the diagram as to who exactly is responsible for what. Remember, U1, as Seth told us last week, is responsible for anything that takes the right fielder going towards the line. U2 then is responsible for anything that brings the right fielder then straight in and straight back. The the center fielder straight in and straight back, and then the left fielder straight in and straight back as well. And then U3 responsible for anything that takes F7, the left fielder, in any direction to the line. Remember that anytime 2 umpires go ahead and break on the same fly ball, we'll defer to U2. So whether or not U2 is correct in his or her pursuit, that wing umpire is either going to go to point of base or rotate, whatever the situation may dictate. Okay, so that is our areas of responsibility. Now remember, our base umpires here, U1, U2, and U3, are only going out or only chasing fly balls that are trouble balls. And we'll revisit those 4 categories here in just a second as well. And in order to do that, what I want to go ahead and make sure that we understand when tracking and chasing is a couple fundamentals. And that takes us back then to the pause, read, react mantra that we've all seen. So I want to break down pause, read, react here in this situation to kind of give us some guidance and some guiding principles in terms of tracking and chasing fly balls as U1, U2, and or U3. Let's first start then here with pause. Now, I'm going to say that we should pause pre-pitch because a lot of us here in all reality, particularly as we go through our umpire careers, kind of take off some time in between pitches. And yes, we should definitely relax or take a breath in between pitches, but at the same time, we've got to make sure that we remain focused here in our pre-pitch cadence, both as a plate umpire, as we talked about a season ago, and then now in this 4-umpire system. So the first kind of element here for us to think about is to take advantage of that time in between pitches to think ahead pre-pitch. Know our areas of responsibility as we just reviewed, and the situation. Are we in a fill or full rotation situation? Likewise then, based upon thinking pre-pitch, we should obviously then, as a new hitter comes up, give some pre-pitch communication. What we will probably do here in the central region is point to our responsibility. This mechanic, or at least this signal, is not necessarily given to us in the manual released by Little League Baseball. It'll probably be something that'll be added in future versions that'll come to us. But what we do here is just go ahead and point to our responsibility. So for example, if I'm the third base umpire and it's a full rotation situation, my responsibilities would be towards second base, so I would go ahead and point towards second base, or they would be to the outfield. So that would be my kind of point there. If I was the plate umpire in a full rotation situation, I would point to third base. If I was U1 in a full rotation situation, I'd point to first base because I have responsibilities there, and then I'd point to the plate, basically signaling here that I would be moving towards the plate. So that's what we mean by pointing to responsibility. And then that goes ahead and at least put your mind in the right frame of mind to know the situation, yes, and then ultimately what's required of you if you are going to go ahead and track and chase fly balls, whether you do it or a partner does it as well. So that pre-pitch time, really, really important for us to go ahead and take advantage of. Now, DJ made this point last week. I think the other thing that we can also do in our pre-pitch cadence is to check the position of the fielders. And obviously that changes from pitch to pitch. So knowing the position of our fielders will really aid us in being able to determine what's trouble or routine. So knowing where, the right fielder is playing, if he or she is playing a little bit closer to the line, then that kind of gives us an idea that, our areas of responsibility may be a little bit different based upon the way those fielders are playing the hitter. So think ahead pre-pitch, know what's required of you, know the situation, communicate pre-pitch by pointing to your responsibility, and then check your fielders consistently. And I think that then helps us to kind of pause in that time before the pitch so that our mind is right so that we can both read and react more effectively and probably more correctly. The last thing here too with pause, anytime the ball gets off the bat, we can pause right there, kind of revisit very quickly, probably in a second or less, all those things that we thought about pre-pitch and then make the right read and reaction based upon the situation as well. So when we talk about pause, the majority of it's done pre-pitch, and obviously with the ball off the bat, it becomes action time, but not before we pause to at least remind ourselves of those pre-pitch reminders that we gave ourselves prior to the pitch. Second step here is to read. So pause then is our pre-pitch. Read is then with the ball in the air. So as the ball is in the air, there are actually 3 reads that we have to make. And on the 60-foot diamond, we've got to make these a little bit quicker. And in the world of softball, a lot of these things happen realistically much quicker than they probably happen in the world of baseball. So the first thing that we want to make sure that we emphasize is to read the fielder, not the ball. If you remember back to the conversations that we've had over the last 2 weeks, areas of responsibility for catch, no catch is determined by the actions of the fielder. So for example, F9 moving straight in and straight back belongs to U2. The actions of the fielder then determine our areas of responsibility. So we want to make sure that with the ball in the air, yes, we may look up at it initially to make our initial read, but we don't want to continue to stare at the ball in the air. Rather, we want to make sure that we read and react to the actions of the fielder. So read the fielder, not the ball here, because remember, areas of responsibility are dictated by the movement and efforts of the fielder. And that's why then, if you remember here, as DJ mentioned last week, it's so important for us to check the position of the fielders pre-pitch. So read the fielder, not the ball. That's our first read. Second read is to read whether it's routine or trouble. Now, many of us probably say, well, that may be a really quick read, and I'm worried if I make the incorrect read, what'll happen? Well, remember the mantra here, and basically to kind of give you a little bit of leeway or at least some grace is when you are in doubt of whether or not a fly ball is routine or trouble, just go ahead and track and chase the fly ball. So when in doubt, go out is essentially the mantra. That doesn't mean that we just go out carelessly on everything, but when we're in doubt of reading trouble versus routine, again, that is the mantra here, when in doubt, go out. Now again, just as area of responsibility is dictated by the action of the fielder, remember that routine versus trouble can also kind of be determined here by the actions of the fielder. Remember, there are 4 different categories that determine a trouble ball. Extraordinary effort, so for example, catch below the waist, as Steve, you mentioned last week. We also have fielder coming in hard, going in backwards, or converging fielders as a second category. Extraordinary effort, converging fielders as 2 major categories here of trouble balls that would dictate U1 or U2 going out. Something that threatens the boundary, so like a home run, potentially something down the line that threatens the sidelines fence, and then ultimately anything that threatens the line within 20 feet. Those are all trouble balls that we should read and go ahead and chase. So again, 2 major reads here for us to make with the ball in the air. Number 1, read the fielder, not the ball. That way we know whose area of responsibility it's in. Secondly, routine versus trouble. That's basically determining should I go out or should I not. Remember, when in doubt, go out. And then the last read that we want to make here is our partners. So we read the fielder, okay, it's in my area of responsibility, it's trouble, so I'm going to go ahead and go out. And now our partners here, this is where proper use of eyes comes in, not only on the ball, but proper use of eyes is also how we work as a crew. So we want to make sure we read our partners. I'll talk about the stop hand in a couple of the video clips here in just a second. That nonverbal we can use then to go ahead and communicate with one another. Now, the last bonus read that we'll talk about later on in our clips here today are tweeners, and I introduced tweeners last week. A tweener is just a shallow ball between the infielders and the outfielders. It's more relevant for us to talk about this with video clips, so I'll save tweeners here and those shallow fly balls a little bit later. So 3 basic reads here that we want to make with the ball in the air. The fielder, not the ball. Routine versus trouble, which dictates whether or not U1, U2, or U3 decides to go out on it. And then lastly, read your partners. Remember, we defer to U2. We only want one umpire out on the fly ball, and that then is going to require us to also read each other, also with proper use of eyes. So we talked about pause. That's our first kind of pre-pitch routine. We've talked about read. That's the ball in the air. And now react. So once we decide to track and chase the fly ball, how exactly do we do that? So when we leave to cover a trouble ball to the outfield, we track and chase it. We want to commit aggressively on those trouble balls. Leave no doubt that you're out. That whole ginger steps where it kind of looks like you're walking out, but you may be staying, those aren't steps that we want. We want to see the umpire, and it doesn't have to be a dead sprint, but we want to see the umpire commit aggressively towards trouble balls. That way, that nonverbal body language communicates to everyone that, yes, we should rotate. So that whole stutter step or that whole slow walk or slow decision, that leaves some indecision. And on the 60-foot diamond, it's important to take advantage of as much time as we can. So commit aggressively. Again, leave no doubt that you're out, and then when in doubt, go out. So that's the first thing here when we react to tracking and chasing fly balls. Also, one other fundamental that we want to keep in mind here when we track and chase fly balls is to run parallel to the fielder attempting to catch the ball. That'll help us to avoid being straight lined. I'll show us some video clips of running parallel here in just a second. We want to get as far as the play allows us to, but we want to make sure that our body is stopped as that fielder decides to go ahead and receive the ball. So get as far as the play allows you, and then make sure that we get set before the fielder attempts to make the catch. And then timing and proper use of eyes. Those two go hand in hand, as we've talked about for months on end here on 3 Up, 3 Down. But remember, we want to make sure that we confirm firm and secure possession, number one. And then secondly, we should see voluntary release of that fielder. And then we can make our signal. Okay, so there's no need to speed things up here on these catch, no catch decisions. Make sure here that you confirm firm and secure possession before you even decide to go ahead and make a signal. So we have firm and secure possession, we have voluntary release, and then at that point, once we see voluntary release, we should see the umpire either make the catch signal for out or safe, whatever the case may be. Now remember, we're also going to want to go out and stay out, and we're not necessarily going to be responsible for anything coming back in. So pause, read, react basically gives us our guiding principles of how to track and chase fly balls. Pause, what do we do pre-pitch to remind ourselves of our responsibilities? Read, remember there are 3 reads that we need to make, all based upon the fielder, trouble versus routine, and then our partners. And then reacting, commit aggressively, run parallel, get as far as you can, but get set. And then make sure that we use proper use of eyes so that we have proper timing to confirm firm and secure possession and voluntary release. DJ Seth, anything in the chat or anything like that here before we take a look at some clips?
Yeah, just a point from Eric here. Just because the ball is not in our coverage area or our specific catch, no catch responsibility doesn't mean you can't help as an extra set of eyes on the ball. Which is a fair point. Obviously, making sure that we're paying attention to our primary responsibilities, whether we have touches or rotations or anything like that, but keeping our head on a swivel and remaining chest to ball as much as possible to help us assist on any type of calls that might need to be made after the fact.
Yep. It's a great point, Eric and DJ. Thanks for bringing that one up. We're not necessarily picking from somebody's pool, so to speak, but at the same time, proper use of eyes. Number one, handle our responsibilities, and then secondly, if we can handle those and also get eyes elsewhere, the more the better here in that situation. Let's take a look at a couple clips here on some of the fundamentals of tracking and chasing fly balls. All that pause, read, react kind of conversation, and some nonverbals here of crew mechanics. Then we'll get into some tweeners here as well. So here we have the first fly ball. It's to right field. You can see the right fielder is chasing this one towards the line. So technically this should belong to U1. But if you take a look at both U1 and U2, U2 is out on the fly ball. But where are U1's eyes? U1 has done a great job to pick up U2. U2 is not correct in his chase of this fly ball in this situation. But again, remember, U2 is the quarterback. We defer to U2, and therefore U1 decides to break off that pursuit and then moves to point of bag. So again, make sure that we make the right read. Read the fielder, not the ball here. And in this case, F9 is moving towards the line. That should have been U1's. Again, if that mistake is made, we just defer to U2. Same type of concept. This ball's in left field. You'll take a look here at the left fielder. Left fielder is going towards the line here. You can kind of see in the freeze frame. Again, you see both umpires, U2 and U3, all start to go ahead and go out on this one. Again, left fielder moving out on this one should belong to U3. It's not necessarily the case here because U2 is out as well. And even though U2 incorrectly, and this is the same clip, even though U2 incorrectly goes ahead and gives chase to this one, we defer here to U2, and U3, as we see here, breaks off his pursuit and moves then into the working area or rotates or point of bag, whatever the case may be given the situation. But again, I think this is why it's so important for us to read the fielder, not necessarily the ball. The third base umpire here and the first base umpire in the previous clip did a really good job of reading the fielder. It was F9 to the line. In this case here, in this one, it's F7 to the line, whereas U2 kind of read the ball. Remember, we want to read the fielder, not the ball. And if two umpires are out on the same fly ball, as we see here, that wing umpire breaks off the pursuit and then either rotates or moves to point it back. Again, proper use of eyes is so important here. I highlighted U1s in our first clip. Everybody take a look at U3. He's done a really good job of pause, read, react. Remember, pause is not only pre-pitch, but ball off the bat, go ahead and read it. When we know we have a fly ball, you saw the third base umpire's eyes and bill of his cap kind of go up. And then now take a look at where his eyes are at. They're on U2. What is U2 doing? Because remember, we trigger off of U2. So a really good job here of these fundamentals exemplified to us by this umpire in this case to pause with the ball in the air, read the partner, and then as we see here, his eyes right there are on U2. U2, as we take a look at him, is giving track and chase to this one very appropriately. The left fielder is actually moving in the direction of center field, so kind of towards the middle and hard in. So U2 is out. That's his fly ball. And then U3 then would go ahead and break one off. Okay. So that's a good look here at nonverbal communication. That's proper use of eyes. I mentioned the stop hand. So here's another really good one. So if you get like something in that area, or if you just want to make it a habit, here you see the right fielder moving towards the line, and U1 and U2 both kind of start to move out on this fly ball. If you take a look at both U1 and U2 in this freeze frame, U2 is starting to move out towards right field, so too is U1. Now, technically, we should defer to U2, but at the same time here, we do a really good job of U1 giving that stop hand, as you see here. And that communicates very effectively that he's on the ball, and that ultimately we can go ahead and give this fly ball to U1. And again, a really good read. This one's kind of in that gray area. The right fielder kind of does move a little bit towards the line. It could be construed as straight in and straight back. So in that gray area, crew communication is crucial here. That stop hand by U1 is fantastic. The chest of this right fielder is towards the line, so we can give this one technically to U1. And again, really good job by the crew to give that stop hand here from U1, and that's going to communicate to U2 to pick him up in the fill rotation. Okay, so that stop hand, very critical here as well. Now remember, in discussing the whole idea of tracking and chasing fly balls, we talked about running parallel so that we don't get straight line. Here's a fly ball to center, straightaway center. U2 is going to give chase on this one. He runs parallel, and again, the whole idea for running parallel is to reduce the likelihood of getting straight line. Now remember, we should get as far as the play allows us and get stopped. This umpire there in this clip here doesn't necessarily get stopped as that fielder is receiving the ball. So we want to make sure we get stopped, set our eyes. Remember, let's make sure that we confirm firm and secure possession, confirm voluntary release, and then make our signal. Another really good example here of one that's kind of closer to the line. This one's in right field. This umpire has a great reaction here to it. So he breaks on this one and does a great job because he knows that this one may threaten the line by his read off the bat. So off the bat, he's thinking, okay, this one may be close to the line. And as you see here, he does a really good job of keeping his chin over the line, does run as parallel as he can. But again, he's thinking that this may threaten the line. So getting to the line and chin over the line does take responsibility and priority over running parallel. We have a hard catch, an extraordinary effort by the right fielder. And again, this umpire goes out, does a really good job of holding the line in this case, and then ultimately here confirms firm and secure possession and voluntary release right there that you see the ball in the hand of the fielder. So we have voluntary release, and then we have our signal. So a good job there by the umpire there. The only bit of advice I would give that umpire and the one in the previous one is to get set before the fielder makes the catch. So again, a good look there at some of those fundamentals of crew mechanics, of nonverbal communication, and then ultimately tracking and chasing fundamentals as well. Now, I mentioned that the last thing that we would talk about here are tweeners, okay? So if we talk about tweeners, just so that everybody is clear on what I mean by tweeners or what we mean by tweeners, and again, this isn't necessarily something that you'll find in the manual right now, but probably something that we'll eventually see added to it, is what exactly to do with these fly balls that are like right around the rim, I guess you could say, of the infield. So where the infield dirt meets the outfield grass. And a lot of times, this is going to be a shallow pop fly that requires the infielders and the outfielders to kind of converge, and then that kind of labels it a trouble ball. But at the same time, Going out on that one wouldn't require U1, U2, or U3 to really go out all that far. And then ultimately, it's very difficult with these tweeners on the 60-foot diamond, given the timing, to actually rotate in time as well. So what we're going to propose umpires to do here with regards to tweeners, and this would be a read that we make off the bat, is to do both. Number one, take catch, no catch, and then secondly, be responsible for all plays at the base. So as we talk about here, we want to position for catch, no catch from our initial starting position where we were at pre-pitch. And then we're going to, from that position, use a standing scissors position to go ahead and non-verbally communicate to our crew that there's no need to rotate and that you have both the catch and you'll be responsible for all plays at your base. So with these tweeners, we want to do both. Number one, have eyes on the catch, no catch, and then secondly, remain responsible. That's what we mean by moving towards point of base afterwards. We want to be responsible. Now, again, the nonverbal body language that we want to have is from our initial starting position to go ahead and take that from the standing scissors set position and then move towards point of bag. And we'll see some examples of that here in the clips that we have. So let's take a look here at some of these tweeners here. Here we have a shallow pop fly to the right side. And again, you can kind of see where U1 is at. U1 in this situation is where exactly he was pre-pitch. We talk about standing scissors position. Okay, again, there's really no need to go out on this one because it's going to be like an extraordinary effort play, but you can kind of see here the right fielder's charging in, the second baseman's going hard back, so we definitely need eyes on this one, and we can't give it to the plate umpire because even if the second baseman would make a play on this, his back is to the plate umpire, which could potentially get in provide an obstructed view for the plate umpire here. So a great job here. Everybody take a look at U1. He does a great job of from that initial starting position, from his pre-pitch starting position, using that standing scissors set position, and then as he reads this one, you can see he starts to move back towards first base to return to point of bag because he's going to be responsible should there be any play into first base or any play back into it. So if we read tweener, do both. Use that standing scissors stance position to go ahead and communicate to your crew that you have the catch, no catch, and that you'll continue to be responsible for all plays and all things at your base. Next clip gives us a really good look at what the umpire should look like. Again, take a look at U3. This ball's in left field. So let's take a look here at U3. Ball in left field. This is his initial starting position at pre-pitch. You can take a look. This is what we mean by the standing set position or the standing scissors position. The standing scissors position. Again, this standing scissors position demonstrated by U3 in this clip communicates those two things, that he has catch, no catch, potentially even fair foul, and he will remain responsible then, or she will remain responsible for all plays and action back into the base. So again here, or even into the base. So again, from your initial starting position, use that standing scissors to go ahead and handle responsibilities there, either catch, no catch, or fair foul, and then aggressively move towards point of bag, as we see U3 do here, and position for anything into the base or back into the base. And again, that standing scissors position communicates to your crew that you have the ball in your catch, no catch area of responsibility, and you still are responsible for everything at your base. Now, why exactly do we give or suggest that we use this mechanic on tweeners? Well, here we have a situation where the umpire, U2 in this situation, goes out on a tweener. And technically, I mean, we got almost three fielders converging on this one. It's in that Bermuda Triangle. So we can kind of understand why U2 may read this as a trouble ball. But here we have a runner at first base. And if we take a look at this, I know the guy at third base, the U3 here, he's a pretty fit guy. And he gets a great read and a great jump on this one. And even with the ball here falling just short of the left fielder, we get a force play. And as you see here, U3, who's pivoting in and rotating, never really gets set. So a lot of times, chasing tweeners does not give our other umpires opportunity then to rotate and be positioned effectively. So what we're going to suggest in doing these tweeners stuff is that in order to avoid this situation, as we see demonstrated here, we just go ahead and, from our initial starting position pre-pitched, use that standing set position and then do both. Take area of responsibility for catch, no catch, as well then as coming back then and taking all plays and all responsibility at the base. Kind of let this one go, and then I see a couple things pop in the chat. DJ, I'll give you that one here in just a second. But again, this standing scissor stance that we see here from this umpire is what we want to use on these tweeners, and then return to point of base. And again, really well demonstrated here by U3. There's our standing scissors position, and then we go ahead and rotate back to a point of back. DJ, go ahead. I see the chat populating here. What exactly do we see popped up here?
So Gary just brings up, and he's just reiterating, trying not to be disrespectful, but just wants to know if the tweener philosophy is endorsed by any groups, NFHJS, college pro ball. The returning after going out has, pretty much opposite of what we've been taught for a long time. Tony does point out, this is probably only going to be used on the 60-foot diamond. This isn't going to be something that you would more than likely use on a 90-foot diamond. I think this is just more or less to assist us since we have such a small diamond. So therefore, it probably wouldn't be really talked about in those other groups. Stu, correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, exactly. And Gary, that's a great question here too, because again, it's the 60-foot diamond stuff. And I've worked with Greg Ramos, who's on the call a lot. We've talked a lot about these tweeners here, and the NCAA for softball has really struggled with these tweeners of getting umpires into position ahead of time. I do think that in softball, the speed of the game is much faster than actually what we even see in Little League Baseball. So I do think that the tweener suggestion, and that's exactly what it is. It's a suggestion, and Eric made this one, probably something that we should pregame as well. So it's not something that we see in any other type of manual. It is actually something that we're starting to see in professional baseball as well. They're kind of given some more latitude to take catch, no catch on routine balls from their initial starting position, whereas where this is kind of evolved from. And even on the bigger diamond, an interesting mechanic that's been used is they're starting to, with U2 in the middle in Major League Baseball, they're starting to give U1 responsibility from the left fielder all the way on over to the right field line, so that we keep number one umpires ahead of as much as we can. But they're, in terms of priorities and likelihood of plays, U2 and U3 in those situations would do more of the bulk there as well. So I would really kind of definitely make this point of clarification. And Gary, I'm glad you say this. This is kind of something that is being talked about in the umpiring world. It's nothing that's been written down here in any stretch of the imagination. I will say that we've used it over the last 2 regional tournaments in the Central region and have had a lot of success with it, simply because the standing scissors position there that we saw demonstrated by U3 in that clip does a really good job of giving some nonverbal communication rather than hanging your partners out to dry, whether you're out or not here. So that's kind of the philosophy, I guess, behind it, the background behind it here too. And as long as you pregame it and talk it through and coach it, generally it goes pretty well for the most part.
Other than relying on a scissor stance, verbal communication, and the mentioned stopped hand would assist in reading that partner. Absolutely. There's no reason that says you can't still do those things. But the goal of the scissor stance is to obviously is that serves as that one single nonverbal cue. But we're not saying don't over communicate. We want to make sure that we're getting guys in the right places and assisting with making the right call, not having 2 umpires out. But whatever helps the crew better understand everybody's individual intention, obviously we want to go that route.
Yep. The back end of Gary's question here about returning after going out has been an enigma for as long as I could. Absolutely. And that's why the standing scissors spot, that's why we want to take it from our initial starting position. And then for the most part, a lot of those tweeners, we're going to be able to read that the ball is down and ultimately kind of give off that position a little bit faster here too. So if you kind of remember the way that clips were for both U1 and U3, like we kind of saw that there may have been something. So it's kind of more of a pause and a read. And then the reaction then is to not only either take both of them in that case or move back to pointed bag. Because in all reality, with these tweeners, for the most part, they don't necessarily get caught. But at the same time, they can be read as trouble balls because you're going to have multiple fielders and fielders using extraordinary effort. So pausing to read those and then, making sure that as the ball drops, we start to move to pointed bag. And that's why it's so important to take it from our initial starting position rather than actually taking a step to the outfield. So hopefully that nonverbal communication definitely gives you a strategy to use, especially on some of those tweeners here as well. Mike, you asked about the Little League manual. Yeah, so it's interesting. I've received a lot of questions here. There has been one that was published and released, but apparently I was under the impression and the understanding that it would be put on the umpire registry. Apparently that has not been the case. I think it'll eventually populate there too. What they're encouraging people to do, Mike, and everybody else here who wants that manual, is to contact your region UIC or your region umpire staff and just ask for it. They should have it. And I think that's the way we're being asked to disseminate it here as well. So I think that's kind of the way here that things are going about. And I don't know why it has to be that way. I think it should be posted on the Little League Umpire Registry, but at least that's been the guidance and the suggestion I've received so far. All right. Yeah, Mike, I'll email that to you. I see that one. I'll email that one to you. All right. Yeah, I figured that would be the case. I'll just include a link to it in in the email that I sent out. So yeah, we'll do that. Everybody else, I'm being told to filter people through the region UICs. So yeah, a lot of for you guys, that a lot of it, that's us as the advisory committee, and then for other people, it's a specific individual. So. All right, other than that, guys, I'll go ahead and round things out. Appreciate everybody's time and attention here yet again. Some great questions, some great points that were given to us here yet again. Again, just want to re-emphasize that whole idea of when in doubt, go out, and then ultimately encourage you to continue to have conversations both during the play, after the play, and in your pre-games about those tweeners, and then use that strategy, as we've talked about here, to make sure that everybody is on the same page, and you know, obviously our communication helps us to be on the same page as well, both with the ball in the air and our pre-pitch communication. Same time, same place again next week for 3 Up, 3 Down. It'll be our last episode in the 4-umpire system. What we'll do is we'll break down the responsibilities of U1, U2, and U3 respectively, take a look at some initial starting position guidelines, and then also working point of bag to set us up for the wedge. So we'll take a look at those concepts then as we get in to round out some things here in our whole methodology of covering things here with the 4-umpire system on the 60-foot diamond. So same time, same place next week, 12:30 p.m. Eastern next Friday. I believe that date is the 25th. Other than that, continue to go ahead and use your tournament resources to get ready for tournament play, and then we'll see everybody then for next week's last episode here in our current series. Looking forward then to wrapping that up. Again, appreciate everybody for being here and your participation. We'll see everybody then next week. Thanks for being here.